myself in times of trouble. Mother Mary comes to me.
John Lennon was never afraid to criticize his own work. Even as one of the most influential songwriters in history, he rarely treated his past with nostalgia. Hello to all you classic music lovers, the cool gentlemen of the good old days, and even now. Let's rewind time and enjoy a heartwarming wave of nostalgia together. For Lennon, honesty always came before sentimentality. That honesty often meant dismissing some of the Beatles' most famous songs, even the ones he helped to write. Behind the glamour and myth of the Fab Four, Lennon's sharp tongue revealed what he truly thought about certain moments in their catalog. Let's look at 7 Beatles songs John Lennon secretly, and sometimes openly, admitted he hated. Number 7, Run for Your Life, 1965.
Can little girl hide your head?
Released as the final track on Rubber Soul, Run for Your Life was a Lennon composition inspired by an old Elvis Presley lyric. At first glance, it sounded like a straightforward rock and roll number, but its lyrics carried an uncomfortable tone. I'd rather see you dead, little girl, than to be with another man.
Well, I'd rather see you dead, little girl, than to be with another man.
Years later, Lennon expressed deep regret over the song. He described it as a song I never liked and called it the worst one I ever wrote. In interviews, he said he was ashamed of its possessive and violent attitude, acknowledging that it reflected a side of himself he had grown to reject. During the mid-1970s, when Lennon became more introspective about his life and relationships, he often pointed to this song as an example of how immature and insecure he had been. Number 6, When I'm 64, 1967.
Get older, losing my head.
The cheerful, music hall-style tune from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was entirely Paul McCartney's creation. Lennon respected Paul as a songwriter, but he often had little patience for songs that leaned toward nostalgia or old-fashioned charm. He saw When I'm 64 as a novelty number, catchy but shallow. Lennon once remarked that it felt out of place among the more innovative and psychedelic material they were working on at the time. While McCartney celebrated melody and tradition, Lennon was chasing new sounds and lyrical experimentation. The contrast between songs like A Day in the Life and When I'm 64 illustrated the growing creative divide between the two partners. To Lennon, the track represented the side of McCartney that he found too sentimental, too safe and too distant from the rawness of rock and roll. Number 5, Obla Di Obla Di, 1968. No Beatles song sparked more frustration for Lennon than this one. Written by McCartney for the White Album, Obla Di Obla Da aimed for a reggae-inspired pop sound. Lennon despised it. He reportedly called it granny music, complaining that it lacked authenticity and wasted precious studio time. According to those who were present, Lennon would sometimes mock the song during recording sessions. George Harrison and Ringo Starr shared his annoyance, as McCartney demanded endless retakes to achieve the perfect version. In one session, Lennon grew so impatient that he stormed out of the studio. When he returned, he sat at the piano, banged out a loud, chaotic version of the song, and said, "This is how it should sound." That take, surprisingly, ended up being the one used for the album, Obla Di. Obla Da eventually became a hit, but Lennon continued to view it with disdain. It symbolized everything he disliked about McCartney's perfectionism and pop instincts. Number 4, Maxwell's Silver Hammer, 1969. By the time the Beatles were recording Abbey Road, the tension between members had reached a breaking point. McCartney's Maxwell's Silver Hammer was meant to be a whimsical story about a student who commits murder with a hammer. To Lennon, it was unbearable. He refused to participate in the recording, dismissing the song as garbage. Ringo Starr later recalled that everyone was exhausted by the endless takes Paul demanded. George Harrison echoed the same frustration, saying the song took 3 days longer than it should have. Lennon saw the track as a creative dead end, a sign that the Beatles had lost the raw spontaneity that once defined them. While McCartney viewed it as dark comedy, Lennon felt it was simply meaningless. Number 3, Hello, Goodbye, 1967.
Say goodbye, and I say hello.
Released as a single in late 1967, Hello Goodbye was one of the Beatles' most commercially successful songs. But Lennon couldn't stand it. He considered it a prime example of Paul's tendency to write songs about nothing. When asked about the song, Lennon bluntly said it had no real message. He found its wordplay superficial, lacking the depth he admired in tracks like Strawberry Fields Forever or I Am the Walrus. To him, Hello Goodbye was the epitome of what separated their artistic philosophies. Paul believed in the universal appeal of simple ideas, while Lennon sought complexity and emotional truth. The song reached #1 worldwide, yet Lennon never changed his opinion. He once remarked that while fans loved it, it represented the part of the Beatles I could never identify with. Number 2, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, 1967. Although Lennon wrote the song, he later admitted mixed feelings about how it turned out. The track became one of the standout moments on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, but Lennon believed the production diluted its original atmosphere. Inspired by a drawing his son Julian brought home from school, Lennon wanted Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds to sound dreamlike and surreal. However, he felt that George Martin's polished arrangement and McCartney's contributions made it too soft, too refined. Lennon said it lost the rough, psychedelic edge he had imagined. Despite its cultural impact, and the endless speculation about its LSD references, Lennon thought the recording never captured the essence of his vision. Number 1, Let It Be, 1970.
Let it be.
By the end of the 1960s, the Beatles were no longer the united force they once were. McCartney's Let It Be became the title track of their final studio release, symbolizing closure for millions of fans. But Lennon saw it differently. He called it another Paul song, distant, religious, and disconnected from the band's identity. Lennon reportedly mocked its spiritual tone, suggesting it sounded like a hymn rather than a rock song. He believed it was too self-serious, too moralistic. To him, the Beatles were about expression and rebellion, not faith and comfort. During interviews, he often downplayed its significance, saying it represented Paul's personal outlook, not the Beatles as a whole. Over the years, Lennon's criticism of these songs has often been misunderstood as bitterness. But for Lennon, artistic honesty mattered more than popularity. He wasn't interested in pretending that every Beatles song was a masterpiece. His openness about disliking certain tracks reflected his constant struggle between sincerity and success. Even when he dismissed a song as rubbish, it wasn't about ego, it was about truth. Lennon viewed music as a mirror of his emotions, not a product to please others. That's why, even decades later, his perspective still fascinates listeners. The Beatles' catalogue remains one of the most celebrated in history. But Lennon's self-criticism reminds us that behind the perfection was a restless artist who never stopped questioning his own work. In the end, perhaps that was Lennon's greatest strength, his refusal to settle, even with his own legend.